Games should be fun before anything else. Makes sense. Is the design purpose of a game an entertaining distraction for the mind? If so, how shall we perceive something we don't find fun? Obviously, this is heavily driven by tastes. Maybe a more action-heavy game or narrative-driven game is fun, while to others something more laid-back and relaxing would be fun. In my case, fun can mean anything from biopunk side-scroller to time-traveling Starship Troopers. I've made it a point to try and understand as many different forms of fun I can. Role-playing games, strategy-based combat, immersive sims, turn-based, looter-shooter, action, extraction shooter, the isometric kind, fighting, horror, cooking, book. Yet even with all of that, what the hell is Genealogy of the Holy War? I rarely feel physically different after having played a game, but Fire Emblem 4 has managed to cross a threshold I originally thought impossible. It didn't fit into what I liked about SRPGs, so it just crammed itself inside and let my preferences fit around it instead. The game has no interest in making my experience frictionless, so instead it rubs sandpaper between my ears and creates more friction instead. I haven't love-hated a game more since Far Cry 2, so if you may, allow me this disjointed indulgence as I try and piece back why it is a goddamn masterpiece. Before we properly get into it, I need to place a lengthy spoiler warning. I really can't talk about the game events without spoiling literally everything. However, that runs under the assumption you, who watches, has played it. Normally I tell you this is definitely worth your time and come back later. However, unlike Cave Story, this is not a frictionless experience. I'd compare it more to dragging a metal fork on a chalkboard. Let me explain. Genealogy has the largest maps in Fire Emblem. I haven't checked, but I feel fairly confident in that claim. The problem with large maps is they are by design meant to be engaged with long-term commitment. Take almost any mission of Fire Emblem 7 Blazing Blade. Very beginner-friendly title. You could pop open Mission 17, fairly easily defend these 2 bridges with your lords and tough units, wrap up the whole engagement in under 10 or so turns. Close up and have lunch all within about 30 minutes. In Genealogy, you will have crossed less than half the map by turn 23, and this is the first level. Later on, you will have to endure the debilitating exhaustion of sending dozens of turns, moving your troops back and forth between castles. Yes, I know the method is to send your horseback troops to one half and your footlock troops to the others to reduce turns. However, having your army together gets you out of far more oh shit moments. Especially early on when most of your troops, even good ones, aren't very self-reliant. Chapter 2 alone took me 99 turns to finish, of which I swear 45 was just repositioning. Which leads us to, this game is hard. I can't speak for later Fire Emblem titles that do have difficulty settings, but the only setting in Genealogy is hard. Obviously some will have differing opinions on this, but for me this was hell. A lot of smaller elements come together to affect you in this campaign, enemy density being my least favorite, since you will face endless hordes of horseback troops with Kanto. Prepare for hit and run tactics like no other. Conversely, luck. I don't mean the stat, I mean yours. Mine was terrible. I endured so many 20 to 30 accuracy hits that ended what would be successful pushes or defenses. Reinforcements. Save before each castle is taken, since that opens up the next wave of troops. This can be within reason. The castle you couldn't previously access now has a path open towards it. Fight the enemy and claim it. Other times, the game will mock you for even trying. Mission 4 I find a particularly rough offender. You're about to take the northern castle, but you're smart. So you send back most of your troops near the blocked road so that you can begin advancing immediately. After seizing the castle, you get a scripted sequence that takes a couple turns. giving Sigurd enough time to run down to regroup with his army. Only you're the fool. After the sequence concludes, the castle sends a horde of Pegasus Knights up to take back the castle you reclaimed about 6 turns ago. And to top it off, in the south you have to save civilians, otherwise they get cleaved by the brigands and mages. The game is full on mocking you for trying to think ahead. Think you could save some turns and time by pre-positioning your forces? Too bad! Now send your fastest back up north to protect the castle, while sending the others south to protect the civilians. And you'd better kill their leader, or else she runs back to the castle and comes back with a fresh squad of Pegasus Knights. I know I'm not addressing the obvious here, in that the game gives you some of the best and most broken units you can imagine. However, the game being easier still doesn't remove that it is tedious. I would prefer the game threw a bone at the player more often. Like, why can't there be more shortcuts? The shortcut that you get in Chapter 7 is great, simple, avoids what would have been easily 10 turns spent crossing the desert to the front lines. If we got just one of these in each mission, imagine how much of the mental exhaustion could have been alleviated. So, to conclude, if you aren't interested in 4-hour-long missions that take delight in your attempts to reduce the hours spent, you can skip this one. I'll leave a short and extremely reductive story summary so everyone can be on the same page. After that, we'll get into specifics. War in Jugdral. Granval battles Izak. Army gets busy, so Verdun attacks Granval's rear. Repelled by Sigurd, son of Byron and his brother-in-law Quan, secret cultist in charge of galvanizing nations. Sigurd falls in love with Deirdre, goes to Augustia to help out Eldingen and his sister, keeps this dumbass on probation for a year. Dumbass breaks out and attacks. Eldingen dies. Deirdre kidnapped. This guy also dies. Bard. Not Bard, I mean Prince Leon. He's apparently really rough. Sigurd is framed for conquest. We go to the prince's kingdom of Silis. Silis suffers civil war. Lots of horses are shot. We rescue Queen Lana. Byron dies. Quan dies. Conspiracy theorists are put to rest. Sigurd sends Oyfe and Shannon to Izak to raise Selef. Arvis signs Sigurd's divorce papers and shakes his hand really aggressively. Arvis becomes emperor. Time skip. Selef now leads the rebellion army, piercing his way through Granval territory. Johan. Shannon breaks the game. Mislaine joins our army. Leonster is slowly liberated from Granval and Thracian influence. Selef and Leif battle Thracia's infinite dragon spam. Families are reunited. Finn avenges Quan. Aryan is an idiot. Selef begins his Granval liberation by rescuing children. More children are kidnapped. Arvis is tragic. Kinda. Arvis and Selef fight for what amounts to 4 days in real time. Selef hallucinates. Final battle. Units so oppressive, I just despawn them for my own sanity. Aryan is an idiot. Manfroy croaks. Julia becomes a dragon and shouts the final boss into submission. Happily ever after. If you want any deeper context than that, you'll have to play and experience this. Back on topic. Why? This is kind of what I was pondering over the start of the video. What is fun here? Why did I put myself through all of this if I wasn't enjoying myself like I did in Gaiden or Mystery of the Emblem? Well, probably because I was immersed in spite of it all. Sounds ludicrous to call something exhausting and then immediately say it immersed me fully, but that is how I felt about the gameplay. Never before did the scale of a Fire Emblem campaign feel this real. Wrong word. Full. I'd go with full. To me, Fire Emblem has never felt like a war. It's just even like a small to large scale conflict. Each mission was made to be finished in under 15 or so turns, and the plot reflects that. The main lords raise ragtag battalions that use their size to maneuver around the nations and whittle down legions one at a time, engaging in solo conflicts so that the main forces can stay behind and defend their nations. Or in some other ones, the lords are far away from their nations and travel with just a small contingent, meaning access to larger forces is cut off. Not so much here. The size of maps, the turn counts, the legions of enemy forces, this is a full-on war. Multiple of them, in fact. Ever wondered how much time passes between each turn? Months pass between each mission in this game. The maps you roam are the size of each individual nation, the likely time taken each turn being between a full or half day. Remember Mission 2? The one that has Sigurd running all over the map? Took me 99 turns to beat. That's 3 months. 3 months of constant battle. Even if it were just a half day, that's still a month and a half. With all these thoughts in mind, this slow gameplay isn't a weakness. It's proof of design. Something the game wears proudly. That said, this style came at its cost: exhaustion. In part, my own fault. I wanted to do at least one whole mission a day. Sure, it's a multi-hour session, but that's manageable. However, this started a cycle. I would beat a mission over the course of the day and spend the next 2 days delaying and dreading the next one. The much healthier approach is to go one castle at a time. Finishing 2 castles a day is far less taxing on your health and lets you move through the game much smoother. Back to the game itself. Keeping in the disjointed theme, I'm skipping all the usual additions like changes and animations. I really don't think it's worth talking about anyway. Let's talk about the mechanic Genealogy is known for. The story events are split between 2 campaigns, missions 1 to 5 and missions 6 to 11. Between the first 5 missions, you need to create romantic partners. Okay, you don't really need to per se, but you will miss out a lot if you don't. Among your units are those who wield the blood of the 12 heroes. What makes this blood special? It lets these units wield the legendary weapons and gives them improved growths based on how much holy blood is within them. More on that in a minute. Pairing holy bloodlines with characters, skills, and classes, yeah, all this matters. You can pair based on, story, love, connections, but that doesn't put stats on the table. I don't care that Sylvia and Arden have nothing in common. Vantage is getting passed down one way or the other. Ever wonder what happens when holy blood mixes? Well, the following child gains 2 bloodlines, and all the bonuses that carries. But what happens when the same holy blood merges? To that, the people of the same descendants will need to marry. Yup, in the case of the Odo bloodline, Kulain and Ira, 2 cousins, can marry to pass major holy blood. This makes the strongest version of their child Larse. For whatever reason, these families run on anti-Habsburg logic. The more inbred, the better. If any holy blood fails to propagate, their line falls apart on its own. Or maybe that's just Claude. As for heritage, that's the boring part. That's the items and money passed down from the parent to their child, and it's never even the good stuff. Luckily, if something doesn't get passed down, you will find it on someone else anyway. On the topic of heritage, this game itself is the holy blood of the franchise. Aside from Shadow Dragon and Blade of Light, this series will forever continue to riff on ideas and concepts this game brought along. Case in point, incest. Okay, I've gotten it out of my system. I'll stop talking about it. Weapon Triangle, a staple of the franchise, brought to you by the Holy War, although I still find Axis to be the weaker end. Support conversations, tied to the romance mechanics in this game, is another future staple. Children, another feature, albeit only used in certain iterations. Mysterious Princes. Leonin is special in 2 different ways. Every other mystery prince is just special in one way. Potentially enigmatic, sympathetic, cruel, scary maniacs who should not be allowed around children, and more. But that's enough delaying for the story. Granval's tale has the most to discuss of anything so far. From the opening alone, the presentation of this game stands out exceptionally, telling the tale of how the 12 gods descended on the dark dragon Lopter and united humankind. The music carries this ominous edge to the tale. Is Lopter truly gone? If you've ever played these games, you already know the answer. Then we get an honest-to-God chronology. Of the hundreds of games I've played, never before in my life have I ever seen one use this. It does come with a problem. None of this means anything to a first-time player. The info on Granval starting a war with the nation of Isaac is told to us not even 30 seconds later. But for me, looking back at this footage, this chronology helps form the foundation of the main motivations of the villains. Prior to the Holy War, Granval was a singular kingdom, simply called Gran. After the Holy War, 5 crusaders went on to create independent nation. Every begrudging alliance in this game centers around each nation's paranoia that Granval intends on seizing their land to create Gran once again. And as you will see, that's exactly what they do. It's why the royalty of Augustria accused Sigurd of conquest on their lands, since that's been a possibility ever since Granval made an army. The only nation to aid us, Cilice, suffers a civil war between its rulers. Even within the other nations, each house fights among themselves for the opportunity to expand their fiefdom, making ruinous deals with neighboring kings who planned around their demises anyway. The game is filled with short-sighted rulers and their suppliers, the cult of Manfred. Manfroy leading the remnants of the Lopter Empire, planning a multi-generational kingly bloodline in hopes of birthing a prince who carries Naga's blood and can house the spirit of Lopter. Okay, a lot of words thrown around, but the base point is, Genealogy manages to take what should be fairly standard Fire Emblem plot threads and expands them in such engaging ways. Dead fathers? Instead of a dark mage just biting his head off, he is embroiled in a long campaign against Isaac, alongside Prince Kurth, the rightful heir to the throne. While he is away, the rivaling houses smear his family as part of a conspiracy to conquer the neighboring kingdoms so that they can overthrow the king. You know, the exact same plan they themselves are currently doing behind the scene. This is especially bad since by the time this conspiracy hits full swing, Sigurd has been fighting back against Verdane royalty and Augustrian royalty all year round, currently stationed in Augustria to keep its idiotic prince under house arrest. By the time Sigurd reaches Granval territory, his father, Lord Byron, has been framed with the murder of Prince Kurth, him now running to Sigurd to hand the holy blade Tyrfing so that he can stand a chance against the royal princes. He hands the broken blade before dying in his arms. Regarding the main events of the game, the first campaign revolves around the framing of Lord Byron and Sigurd. Sigurd is rather explicitly kept busy outside of Granval. This leads to his framing as a ringleader behind the murder in an attempt to become emperor. In a rare case I actually love, Sigurd really didn't have a way of proving his innocence without force. He did spend years away from Granval. His army houses many soldiers and princes from rivaling nations, especially Leowen and Ira. This not being helped by the paranoia of Chagall leads to him having to flee to Silice, which gets Silice wrapped up in the same problem as its princes work with Granval to capture him. This followed by Sigurd slaying Langbalt for murdering his father, one of the leading houses of Granval who helped form the conspiracy against him. I'm shocked Arvis even gave him the opportunity to talk afterwards. All this leading to one of the most memorable scenes in the whole game. Your protagonist dies. No comebacks, no save files, dead. Something wholly unique to the Holy War. Unless you count that one. Arvis is easily in the potential best Fire Emblem villains just for this one scene. He robbed Sigurd of his kingdom, his family, his comrades, his wife, and then chose to kill him. If it wasn't so well laid out, I'd almost have called him petty for it. What makes this worse is that there's no real animosity on Arvis's end. Killing Sigurd was just his path to becoming emperor, no different than any of the other lords and kingdoms he crushes on his path to glory. If it makes matters worse, Deirdre, Sigurd's wife, is his sister. Yep, we're back. Shozo Kaga, the game director on this and all previous Fire Emblem titles, wanted to reflect medieval history, what with its homicide, patricide, incest, you get the picture. That's why it keeps coming back to this. If it gets any weirder on top of that, Arvis actually does love Deirdre, not as a political marriage or anything, as a wife, and apparently her feelings for him weren't that shabby either. Sigurd straight up got cucked. Another element this series introduces into Fire Emblem. From Sigurd's death, Seliph is brought to the stage. In one of extremely few cases where your main lord changes throughout the story, the second saga of the Holy War is Seliph cleaving a path into the center of Granval, being hailed as a liberator and true Emperor Jugdral. On his journey, all the previously open plotlines get resolved. Quan gets avenged in the most badass way possible. Eldigan's heir is reunited with Seliph. Shannon takes up on Ira's legacy. Altena reunites with her brother. Leaf who exists, and we'll get to him when we play Thracia 776. Tying into Leaf's side of the story is perhaps one of my favorite Fire Emblem archetypes, Wyvern Rider side antagonists. Travent, the leader of Thracia, rival to Quan, the Lord of Leonster. Quan is an amazing fighter, extremely strong, stands toe-to-toe with Sigurd on the battlefield, and wields the legendary lance Geabolg. How does Travent even stand against this? Simple, he doesn't. He flies instead. During the final mission of the Sigurd campaign, Quan and his wife arrive to assist us with a battalion, but he gets ambushed by Travent and his Wyvern Knights, all wielding horse slayers. He kills every single one of them, except for Quan's child, who Ethelyn chose to bring with her for some reason. Travent raises her as his own daughter. What I enjoy about Travent specifically is his more ambiguous nature. He is a war chieftain, fighting is in his blood as the wielder of Gungnir. But as the story goes on, you see why he and Thracia were molded this way. Poverty. It's not an excuse for war, but to tie back into that paranoia about Granval occupation, Travent distrusts Leonster for being allies of Granval. Even after killing Quan, he is repelled from Leonster by Lord Bloom, who then seats himself as the leader of Leonster, bringing it under Granval's wing, exactly what he feared. By the time Seliph arrives in Thracia to end Travent's invasion and armies, Travent leaves Gungnir and his main forces in the hands of his son Aryan, resigning his life to death in combat. This is another element Fire Emblem uses frequently. The older generations are incapable of the necessary change, whether by choice or perspectives, leaving their younger generations to make the decisions they couldn't. If Aryan survives the Holy War, he does. He and his sister Altenna seek to repair Thracia and its relationship with Leonster and Granval. I've wondered about Travent's choice to fight us a lot. Is this supposed to be martyrdom? Is it sacrifice? Did Travent just know how to battle? He himself considers himself just a warrior, someone part of the past. Or was this in some form penance for Altenna? Who knows? It's always good to have food for thought. This also leads to the single most badass confrontation in the game. Finn, Quan's most trusted soldier, gets revenge for his master's death. Let's talk about Arvis. Potential candidate for best character in the game, Arvis is the elder brother of Azel, leader of House Valthomer and heir to the blood of the hero Vala and the dark dragon Lopter. Arvis has one motivation: to be the emperor of the next golden age of Yggdrasil. This leads him to work alongside Manfroy to assassinate Prince Kurth and kill Sigurd. And then he says this. It's kind of amazing that for a character that managed to be so careful and strong, he also failed to see that he was played no better than any of the lords he abandoned. See, Arvis being emperor isn't important to Manfroy at all. What's important is Arvis marrying Deirdre, since their union gives birth to Julius, a child born with strong Lopter blood. Barely 4 years into his life, his mind gets taken by the dragon itself, making him the host for Lopter's soul. In Julius's birth, we finally see what Arvis's purpose was in the Holy War: breeding material. In the grand chronology we saw, he will be remembered not as Emperor of Yggdrasil, but as father to Emperor Julius. In the penultimate mission, we see Arvis freeing kidnapped children in his castle, since that's something Lopter needs, I think. Julius stops him without any concern. This is what being the strongest warrior amounted to for Arvis. By his own children's standard, him carrying the blood of a hero makes him a defect. And what can Arvis even do? Fight Lopter? Something not even the original 12 heroes could do without Naga's help? Likely why he chose to die battling Seliph, place some endpoint in his doomed life. The one thing he intended to prevent, becoming the one thing that came of his succession. Arvis's tragedy comes from him being no different than any of the lords of Yggdrasil. It's part of the message the game carries. These people sacrifice comrades, nations, family in the name of power. More land, a wealthier title, leaving themselves exposed to the very people they allied with. The cult of Lopter being a simple dark dragon cult is perfectly fine here. It is a literal deal with the devil. The literal only grace in his life being his daughter Julia. Turns out Deirdre lied. She didn't just have Lopter blood, she also had Naga blood. Thus Julia is born with the perfect counter to Julius. If I have any complaints about the story, it's Julius. Not that he's bad per se, it's just you never get to see him. Make no mistake, this is not Julius, it's Lopter. It's part of the story that Julius had no say in his fate, but that still leaves in my eyes a weaker villain. Again, we'll get to this someday. Doesn't help that his boss battle is a shouting match between dragons. Hell, I much preferred Harden, at least he was ambiguous in his internal motivations. Even so, it's fully serviceable to the larger plot. Julius being one note isn't as much a detriment as it's a personal taste that I'm not a fan of. Same as Manfroy's cult. Moving on to playable characters. I am now going to dwell on the larger cast. There's a lot, and I really don't need to summarize all of them, so here are the best ones. Sigurd. What did you expect? Jamke? Sigurd is the de facto strongest unit. Wielder of Tyrfing, father of Seliph, stoicism incarnate. His only flaw is he doesn't have too much of a personality outside of the word virtuous. He's a good guy. Like a really, really good guy. I trust him with my sword, my horse, my keys, my wallet, my children, my house, my security number. Lex. Master of the gene pool. Simply having Paragon makes him a potential father for literally every child unit. Mate chose war against his own nation simply because Azel asked nicely. Extremely reliable guy, sad that axes fall off after chapter 4. Leoin. Gods seldom care for human problems. Having access to Forseti basically turns him into one. Easily the most powerful Act 1 mage. However, maybe my translation patch wasn't up to snuff or something, since what the hell is this dialogue? Why does Leoin talk like a creep? Why is Sylvia even creepier? I guess the god comparison is apt enough in that case. He also manages to fit being a deadbeat dad into his character profile. I don't care about the dead Leoin theory. He should not be acting like they owe him a talk and a blessing. Take Zed to the park one time, damn it! Ira and Larse. Basically interchangeable, from personality to skills, both embody the lethal sword master spirit. Larse has at least a comical romance with Johann, should you choose to go there, whereas Ira is much more composed. Both make up some of the best soldiers in your respective armies. Ares. Child of the late Eldigan. Ares is hard carried by his sword Mislain. The amount of random bullshit this weapon lets him get away with is embarrassing. Almost as embarrassing as Ares when he uses anything else. Fire Emblem sometimes creates characters who end up being more defined by what they carry as opposed to who they are, and Ares is smack dab in the center of that group. Quan and Ethlin. Quan is the strongest fighter, bar none, for the 3 missions you get to use him. He may not hit twice, he may not even hit at all, but he might not even have to. He gets his legendary weapon rather late, so late that I accidentally didn't even use it, but that didn't hold him back an inch. Ethlin, on the other hand, is a really good healer. Horseback units just dominate the entire game. I just wish she was a pre-promote, and less dramatic. Who brings a baby to a battlefield? In the desert? Midir and Edain. Always the archers, peak performance. Midir just hits from start to finish. So does his child Lester. No complaints or drawbacks. Archers never stop being reliable. Edain is a footlocked healer, but she heals. And being able to wield physics staff gives her way more safe healing options. Her sister Bridget continues the archer tradition of just being plain excellent. Her child Fibal, however, is less than excellent. While still strong and capable, not having a horse for 2/3 of the campaign makes him less of an attacker and more of a defender. He also uses Yofel as a crutch for any fight he can't win on his own. Shannon and Oife. Absolute glow up on both of them. Shannon absolutely dominates with Balmung in his hands, but he doesn't need it to be unmatched in combat. Oife is swole. Wielding a most assertive mustache, armed with nothing more than an iron sword, he still keeps up with the strongest soldiers in your army. Said. Strongest mage, bar none. Makes sense since he's Leoin's son. I don't know what went lacking in Azel or Tayu's bloodline since their children are average at best. I mean, the answer is just speed and utility. Wind has the lightest tome and Forseti is a crit monster. I will say, I do find it annoying how easily Leoin gets off the hook in the end, and the whole, I hope I can one day be as great as him. Mate, he told off soldiers from a castle while you threw tornadoes at God. Selip's endless glazing. Look, I like Leoin. Leon's a really good character, but even the implications of his true identity make him really cool. Like, I like the concept that he is potentially a god. But man, these lines just irritate me. Seth deserves better. Like, way better. And an apology. Seliph. Nowhere as powerful as his father, but honestly that barely even matters since he still effortlessly carries the front line. Only real drawbacks to Seliph is that his early game is really wonky, and just like Sigurd, his personality boils down to, I'm the good guy. His conversations with Leowen are more for exposition than exploration. Their talk about the death of the Edda Castle's bloodline isn't used for any meaningful insight past Claude never got laid. I'm not a fan of the few character interactions we do get because they're just used to get the player up to date on the info for the world events. Like, Seliph, do you have a favorite food? Okay. It's mostly a non-issue. He's a very serviceable protagonist. Finn, best unit in the game. It's shocking how simply he gains this qualification. All he needed to do was be playable in Act 1 and Act 2. If it was that basic, he would never have been the best of the best. No, Finn is the embodiment of the one-man army. From the moment you get him to the moment he leaves, there isn't a battle he can't fight and can't win. He has zero crutches, no legendary blood, no specialty weapons, no special skills. All he needs is a silver lance and a dream. Even with Quan and Ethelin's death, he goes on to raise their son Leif. Eventually, in my run, he crossed lances with Travent. After the final battle concludes, he just says bye and goes back to serving Leif, telling Seliph he helped him not because of his cause but because it serves Leonster, and that Quan would have liked him to help. Absolute badass. Finn is my favorite unit in this game, easily top 10 of all time. Right up there with his future self. If it wasn't made apparent by now, I love this game. It's been an obsession ever since I played it ages ago. I just finally gained the patience to finish it. Although, it has made me fearful of more Fire Emblem games. No other title is like this, so is it just never gonna hit as hard? I have no clue. This is also the most incoherent ramble I've had yet. I'm genuinely sorry if it got too messy. It's just an Act 1 to 3 structure of a review wouldn't do this game any justice at all. I also got this done considerably faster than I thought I would. Bless Shozo Kaga and his madness for creating this gem of a game. One day I'll perhaps check out Berwick and Vesteria Saga. And we're not even done. Next is Thracia 776, the story of Leif, the other half of the Jugdral saga. As for where Genealogy stands on the list, hard to say. Some moods I'm feeling above Cave Story, some moods I'm feeling below. As it stands right now, I say barely below Cave Story. They both are masterpieces in my eyes. And that's all I got. I'll return when I'm done with Thracia 776. Thanks for watching. There is no outro. Goodbye.